So, right now is actually a little bit of a confusing time to be a comic books fan. And I have to be honest with you, I don't really understand how things got to be the way that they are. With a lot of the things that are going on right now, you would think that right now would be a very exciting time to be a comic book fan. And, I mean, obviously it's not all bad. A few weeks ago I talked about the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. That actually did arrive, of course, and it's fantastic. It is just a vastly superior version of that movie, and even the things that they kept out of the Joss Whedon cut that were not very good, they actually managed to improve upon quite a bit. In terms to just enough to make it tolerable. Actually, not even just to make it tolerable, to actually make these things, very much more compelling than they were in the Whedon cut. I mean, I know the one thing that I had hoped for was that I had hoped that they were going to get rid of the whole Frankenstein resurrection of Superman from the Joss Whedon cut. That was just it was awful. They did wind up keeping it, and I'm not going to go into the details of it so that I don't spoil this for anybody who hasn't had a chance to see it yet. But they did wind up keeping, that awful Frankenstein resurrection. But the way that they did it, the way that Zack Snyder did it compared to the way that Joss Whedon did it, was actually much better and actually made it a very compelling little segment of the film to watch. But that's not actually what I am going to talk about today. What I'm actually going to talk about today is just the sheer amount of shenanigans around the character of Captain America right now. So I'm sure that a lot of people are aware there's a new Marvel series on Disney Plus called The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Pretty much picks up right after Avengers Endgame and kind of goes on to explore what's next for the Captain America legacy after Steve Rogers gives up the shield. And the series itself is actually really good. They start off right off the bat revisiting some great stuff from the Winter Soldier movie, and just kind of take off from there. And it's a really good series, but right now there is so much steaming hot bullshit going on with this character and with this property in general. It's almost making it a difficult thing to enjoy. So, I suppose maybe coming back to the series itself, a lot of this does have to do with this series. It is kind of unnecessarily spoiling it, unfortunately, but I think actually the most obvious place to start is actually with something that's going on in the Captain America comic books itself. And so this was actually discovered this week. Somebody released a panel from an upcoming issue of Captain America, which, believe it or not, is now they're into volume 9 now. That's how many times they've kicked over the numbering to start the series over again. 9 bloody volumes of the thing. That's something that Marvel really needs to stop doing. But that's not actually this particular story. So, it was discovered this past week that the current writer of the Captain America comics, it's a guy by the name of Ta-Nehisi Coates. And for anybody who's not familiar with the name, he's a race activist. And really, he's not a very nice person. Previous to getting into comics, this guy, he was a columnist at The Atlantic. And he wrote a column about his reactions to September 11th, 2001, and what he basically said was that when he saw all those first responders, all those firefighters and EMTs and police officers that were rushing into the World Trade Center to go and try to save people's lives, and the whole building collapsed down and killed so many of them, basically he said that he had no emotional reaction to that. Now, there's been a lot said over the years about some of the politics surrounding 9/11. And not everybody really sees it the same way. And that's something that I think is fair to talk about. But when you're talking about these first responders, you're not talking about people that have anything to do with all of these policies that all these other people have not liked, over so many decades. They're just people that are out doing their jobs and trying to save lives. And when this guy comes out and says that he was emotionally indifferent to what happened on that day, he's basically saying that he was emotionally indifferent to the ending of thousands of lives of people that had nothing to do with those policies and were only trying to serve and help people. You can try and twist that around and wrap it around your mind as many times as you like. There is no way to make that sound good. And especially when you consider the fact that, as a black race activist, you would think that he would at least take into account the number of those police, firefighters, EMTs, all of the office workers who died. It wasn't as if none of them were black either, so you would think that he would be able to muster some empathy for them on that particular level, but no, this is a guy who says that he couldn't muster any empathy for that. And to me, that's kind of reprehensible. And so that was what he said all of that time ago. Admittedly, that was 20 years ago. So, let's run the tape forward a little bit. Let's run the tape forward just about 20 years and look at something that has actually happened under his tenure as the writer of Captain America. And apparently, in this most recent issue of Captain America, he decides to take some shots at Dr. Jordan Peterson. Now, Dr. Jordan Peterson, he's what you would call a polarizing figure, obviously. Nobody's obligated to like Jordan Peterson. There are all kinds of people out there that have all kinds of opinions on Jordan Peterson, and everybody has that right. But what Ta-Nehisi Coates did with this most recent issue of Captain America was that he wrote the character of the Red Skull to resemble Dr. Jordan Peterson. Now, of all the things that you could say about Dr. Jordan Peterson, to say that he is a Nazi or like a Nazi is not even remotely within the realm of the rational or the reasonable. Basically, what it is it's an extremely nasty political slur. And the only reason why it's even being directed at Jordan Peterson within the pages of this comic book is because, there are a lot of people that are, of the same political mindset as Ta-Nehisi Coates, who for a very long time have targeted Dr. Peterson for this kind of treatment. And there was two broad ranges of response to this. Amongst the people who support Dr. Peterson, there was a lot of rage. And really, in my opinion, anger was probably not unjustified. And amongst the people that would normally support Coates, there was this, quite frankly, just really dumb. It's like, oh, well, if you resemble a fictitious Nazi, then maybe you should rethink your ideas. Which is, quite frankly, just absolutely bizarre. It kind of suggests that these people actually think that that fictional characters have some kind of agency of their own. And they don't. All they do is they just... Now, I can tell you this as well as anybody. They represent what their particular author chooses for them to represent. It is a conscious choice. And what Ta-Nehisi Coates chose to do with this character that was not even of his own creation was he chose to weaponize him against an individual that was targeted for this kind of a slur. And right now, I think that this is actually one of the biggest problems with what's going on with a lot of these existing, iconic pop culture properties right now. Is that right now there are a lot of people who are gaining control of these things that they never created, that they don't really have any claim to aside from being given control of them by somebody who also didn't create them. And now, quite frequently, what they so often seem to be saying to themselves is like, well, now that I have control of this thing, I can use this to go out and attack all the people that I don't like. And there are a lot of people out there right now who are saying, it's like, oh, well, Captain America has always been political. I mean, Captain America in the 1940s, he punched Adolf Hitler. Which, fair enough, I mean, that's true itself. But there is something about this that actually is unprecedented. And what's unprecedented about this is that this is the first time that these comic book characters have ever actually been used to make such just a slanderous attack on somebody who, for all intents and purposes, I mean, yes, to a degree, he is a public figure in some regards, but he's not an elected figure. He's not a political leader. He's a psychologist. He's a professor. He's an author. For the most part, he is a private citizen. And there is an obviously massive difference between Captain America punching Adolf Hitler in the 1940s and the Captain America comics being used to slur a private citizen in 2021. I think it speaks to a tremendous degree of narcissism, of entitlement, and quite frankly, pettiness on the part of this current author, that he gets control of this character, and now what he's going to do is he's going to use that as a weapon to go after the people that he doesn't like. You know, the individual people, private citizens, that he doesn't like, and that's what he thinks, that's what he thinks that this character is for now that he's been given control of it. I think that a lot of people would take exception to that. I think that the most amusing thing about the entire situation is that a lot of these people who seem to despise Dr. Peterson so much, when you actually look at the way that they're behaving around this particular episode in particular, I don't think that they realize it, but they're actually giving credence to a lot of the things that he says that they don't like. They don't like that Dr. Peterson talks so much about dominance hierarchies, and they don't like the things that he has to say about them. And yet, what they're actually doing right now is they're making an appeal to status in order to justify, what this Ta-Nehisi Coates has done. They're basically saying to themselves, it's like, well, we have the status, we have the power, we get to decide what this particular character represents, and we're going to use that to slur you. And the reason why we can do that is because in our opinion, you're an individual of such low status that we can do anything that we want to you. I mean, personally, I almost consider it ironic that people who, scream so much about the things that he says about status hierarchies are themselves so obsessed with status and, quite frankly, so determined to misuse it when they manage to obtain it.